Welcome back into the Sports Source, the segment of our program brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. Right now, it is tough to find building materials. The basic stuff, too. But with 100 years of experience in contacts, A.G. Hines Company has a bigger selection than most of the national chains right now. If you are starting a building project, start by visiting A.G. Hines Company to see if they have what you need. My guess is there's a much better chance they'll have what you need than some of these, some of the national chains because of their contacts. And I know this for a fact, as a matter of fact. I'm talking to the folks at A.G. Hines Company because some of the big box stores have been calling them, wanting to buy their product for them, from them. So instead, A.G. Hines Company holding on to that, and they're selling it to you. A.G. Hines Company right in downtown Knoxville, 101 years they've been at it. Get down and see them this week. All right, here's a guy we don't get to see around here very often, and I want to say thanks, first of all, John Wilkerson from WNML AM and FM. You just got finished with a long baseball season. It's the 4th of July. I texted you and said, hey, would you still come on and do the show? And he's kind enough to come and do it. John, thanks for being here.
Always great to be here, John. Thank you.
It.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. It's been a while, and face-to-face, we hadn't seen each other.
That's right.
All right, so you heard our conversation. I'm Mr. Meany on this thing. What are your thoughts on the NIL? Just basic overview.
Well, I do think that everything's moving in the right direction, but as David was talking about, this is something that you could have implemented over years and years and years. It was just a matter of getting the ball rolling. One thing I didn't put into consideration are the number of folks that have made a different path for themselves. As we've talked about, there's a CEO on the Tennessee football team that it's $1 million company, and so now he gets to have some of his teammates be their spokesman. And but then you look at some of those that have the social media outlets that are TikTok and other things that they have millions of followers. Yeah. This is going to be something that will make them very, very wealthy, as well as continue to further their athletic career.
One thing that I think is kind of getting passed over, and I don't mean this, again, I'm for the kids being able to make money. I am. I think that's a good thing. It's a step in the right direction. I just wish there was a little bit more of a regimented guideline to it. And eventually I think Congress will step in and say, okay, you can't do ads for gambling sites. You can't do an ad for, Joe's brand of weed. Maybe
most
you
of the
should
schools
be
have those guidelines, but
not all of it. It's state laws, and some of the schools have it, but it's different everywhere. Anyway, one thing I think though that is kind of getting lost at the moment is the Tiger Woods situation, and here's where I go with it. Tiger Woods was an adult male. Buick, Nike, his sponsors. Here's a guy with a long track record of being a good guy, clean image, family man. It all blows up. Why? Because he's human. Because we all do dumb things. I am the king of doing dumb things. That said, what age group tends to do dumb things most often? And my fear is that there are a lot of people jumping into this not thinking, oh, I'm going to get this 18-year-old to represent me. Well, somebody's going to wind up with Caden Salter as their representative. There is a side to this that I think could be some blowback, because you think about, a kid gets pulled over for weed in a car, okay. Kid decks somebody at the local pub down on the strip. What if there's something worse, something with a female? There are sides to this where you are you are making a representative of your company someone who is 18, 19, 20 years old. They don't have the life experience to know what they can and can't do. That's why if you look at it, who gets in trouble punching people in bars? Football players or older football coaches? It's players. So if I were a company, I'm not saying don't do it, I would just be leery of who am I bringing in? How are they going to represent me? Is there a chance of danger here? Is that fair? Is that just me being Mr. Meany?
Well, if it happens, then you just say, we don't want you to rep us anymore.
Well, I get
and you
that.
Cut that.
But that doesn't help you when it first explodes
but I think
in your face.
Everybody knows what you said. And I think it's not like if you are a company and you're repping a player and then that player gets in a bar fight or abuses his girlfriend or something like that, that means that you're a bad company. Maybe if you say, we don't care about this stuff, we're going to keep with this guy, that's one thing. But I think people understand what you said and say, hey, this kid made a mistake. We don't want him to rep our company right now, and we'll see where it goes from here. And I think you can wash your hands of it, and that's that.
Okay, on the back end, I would wonder if Nike felt that way when they went through the Tiger Woods thing, that it was just as simple as, hey, we didn't know.
Steve Hamer was on with Jimmy and Vince on Friday, and he brought up an excellent point, and that is how many protections are going to be built into place when you have these agreements, talking about this situation where something unfortunate happens. Is that person, is that athlete now going to be penalized? Is he going to owe them all the money that he's been paid and perhaps even more? I think you do have consultants that you're allowed to have if you're a high school athlete coming out and playing baseball and going into the draft. I think you're going to need consultants in this realm just to make sure that there are protections, that everybody's aware that if you do indeed cross this line, you could wind up having to forfeit all the money you've been paid and perhaps pay a penalty.
Yeah, which is, again, there have been studies that show the chemicals in the 20-year-old brain aren't the same as the chemicals in a 50-year-old brain. You don't have the same risk factor. That's why I wasn't scared of heights when I was 20. Now at 50, I look over the edge and go, oh, I could die. At 20, it was like, woo, I'm walking on the edge, baby. Because our brains aren't the same. So a kid may be sitting there thinking, yeah, there could be trouble, but they aren't thinking about the same way a 50-year-old. And let me tell you, as a 50-year-old, there are times I still make dumb mistakes. But I just think that there are a lot of people jumping into this right now without much thought to, how could this blow up in my face if I've got this guy representing me? And you're right, you can always clean it up on the back end, but that doesn't help you when the story first hits. And that guy is on the face of your advertisements, and you're having to run to get ads pulled. Vince, your thoughts on this? Am I just being a negative Nelly here?
No, it's definitely a fair point. But the responsibility, if a company doesn't want to be embarrassed by someone representing them, is to be more selective in that. Now,
exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Right. So, but to me, it's still worth doing it because for some that might screw up, you don't want to eliminate the opportunities of many others that are going to handle it right. And I do think a lot of the athletes, we're not going to hear anything about it because they're handling it right. They're just doing their own thing. So that's why it's still, yes, some will screw it up, no doubt about it, but it's still worth doing the whole thing and not shutting it down for a couple of people. And then also, I love the fact that a lot of athletes are really trying to put the message out to these kids. Don't jump on the first thing you see. Get some help.
Right.
Is it unrealistic for everybody? Sure. But at least try to help the message get across to some people so they don't jump on the first thing. They can read between the lines. They don't sign long-term deals that tie them up when better opportunities might come afterwards. So I like that part of it. It's not perfect. It's going to have script.
We had Will Overstreet and Sterling Hinton and J.J. Surlis on a show about a month ago, and we talked about this, and they brought up a lot of the downsides that people aren't talking about. One of them, Will, made it very clear that you better have some people that are helping these people monetarily, that are helping these kids. And now there are groups who are stepping out to their companies that have now made this their business. Oh, we're helping kids do this. All right, how many of those companies are reputable? We don't know yet because they all just were founded in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
We have no clue who kids are being represented by. And then J.J. Surlis pointed out another issue is he was a lineman. What do you get into in terms of the locker room when the linemen never make a dime and the quarterback and running back get everything? What happens? I mean, there are all kinds of those inner locker room issues that are going to pop up. I just see a lot of room for mistakes and problems to come, more so than I think most people view. And maybe I'm wrong. There's a good chance I'll be wrong. But I just think, I'm not saying kill it. I'm for it. I just wish there was a little bit more of a, right now it's like, in terms of baseball, there is no outfield wall. There are no foul poles. It's just anything goes. Put in some foul poles, put the outfield wall in, and then we're good to go. That's kind of my take on the thing. I'll let you finish up on this NIL. Final thoughts on where this thing is going. Do you think that the NCAA and Congress eventually step in a little bit and try and rein it in, or do you think it's just going to be Wild West from here on out?
I do think you're going to have built-in oversight, and I do think that you can create an entry point where you have, of course, it creates a ton of more work for the compliance department.
Those poor people.
But I do think that you can have that to where you register with the university with a specific athlete, so there would be oversight on the agreement. You would again make sure that the agreement is being adhered to, that it isn't some inflated huge payment that's going for this as opposed to that. I will say this, I do think that with the number of alumni that wind up living in the community where a school is, the linemen are going to get some love. Because there are a lot of linemen that have businesses here now.
That's a good point. Great point. All right. When we come back, what are we going to talk about next? Let's talk about football. Let's switch over to football. We got a whole big back half of the show where we talk with Vince and John about this baseball team. I want some inside baseball, pun intended, from those guys. But football is next. Come on back on the Sports Source.